Bloodroot. This is a little plant here. You can see here's my hand, so you can kind of see it's not a big giant plant. This is probably about as big as it's going to get. Bloodroot is one of your first green leaves that comes out after the snow melts. You'll have certain things around, but bloodroot, all of a sudden you'll see these very uniquely shaped leaves, and they grow up literally one leaf and then one flower, a little white flower. As the leaf is unfurled, the leaf will still be kind of curled up around the flower, and a little tiny white flower will come out of it. And bloodroot is, somebody's going to be yelling and be like, I read a book and it says it's toxic. It is. It is a toxic plant, but it is also sometimes your most toxic plants, the ones that you should avoid as much as possible, also can become the healers in very dire situations. And bloodroot can be, you dig up the root, and I actually made a video out of this and showed it. So if you want to see making black salve, I think is what the name of the video is. It was a couple years ago, so I can't remember exactly, but it's something on making black salve. And you dig up the root, and when you dig up the root of bloodroot, you should wear some sort of protective gloves, because the juices from the root can do damage if you have very sensitive skin. And the bloodroot, the reason it's called bloodroot is because the juices are a deep red color. And so you dig that up and you throw that in. I made a video on how to make chickweed plantain salve, and we put comfrey in. If you throw in bloodroot along with that and make that, that's going to be your black salve, and it's going to be very dark colored. Once you add the beeswax, it'll be less dark, but it is going to be a dark colored salve. And this is very good for removing skin tags, and here's the big one. Well, both of the next two are big. It's also very good at getting rid of skin cancer. But here's the problem with it. It will attack all the unhealthy cells. And a lot of people, they'll see a little dot and they'll think, oh, skin cancer, and they'll put some black salve on. And the next thing you know, they have a crater where it was. Well, a lot of times the little skin tag that comes up, that you see, the little piece of skin cancer that comes up, actually is the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot of cancer still down below, deep in the skin, deep in the flesh. And the bloodroot salve, the black salve, will eat all of that bad tissue. And so it's not one, I don't usually recommend it to be used on your face, because there are horror stories of people who have, they got sunburn, so they got a little bit of skin cancer on their nose. So they put just a little dab of it on their nose, and the next thing, the black salve ate their nose off their face, because literally their whole nose was full of cancer. The other thing it's very good for, and this is something that I always think of the Civil War, where they just chopped off people's legs. If they got gangrene, they just cut off the legs so that they didn't, so that the gangrene wouldn't spread. This will eat gangrenous tissue. If you get, and gangrene, it's really easy to know that you've got it, because it smells. Oh God, does it smell. It's this sickly sweet smell. And this will get in, and it will eat all the gangrenous tissue, and I have actually seen that work. I had an uncle who would not go to a doctor. He never went to a doctor, and he got gangrene on just above his knee, on the inside, because it was wintertime and he had lots, he just wore long underwear and lots of clothes, and the wound never got to breathe and heal, and it went gangrenous. And they put black salve on it, and it literally ate it away. Now, don't come away thinking then your leg will be nice and smooth. It's going to eat a crater into your leg. And it's not the most pleasant of things, but it's better than losing the whole leg to surgery because of gangrene. So I always think that if the people back in the Civil War time had listened to the American Indians who knew of this cure, they could have had people not losing their entire leg, and instead just having, like a crater eaten out of it, but then they'd still have the leg. But in a survival situation where we don't have antibiotics, that's something to remember, is the bloodroot. And it has it's a very unique leaf, and it grows in deep, dark places. This is, if we look through here, this is a woodland pond, very deep and dark. It's dark medicine. It grows in a dark place, and it can kill you, but it can save you as well. So it's one of those last resorts. I always make up a batch of black salve every spring, and I always pray we'll never use it, and for the most part we never have. But it's something, it's an insurance policy to keep, because by the end of that spring by the next spring it won't be powerful enough, so you'll have to make another batch of it. But anyway, bloodroot, dark medicine for dark times. Okay, we have these big giant elephant-eared things here, these big leaves. See my hand in comparison, they're very large leaves, and this is skunk cabbage leaves. And skunk cabbage comes up with the flower first, as many woodland plants do, because they have to come up and be pollinated before the leaves come out on the trees. So the flowers come up very early. Skunk cabbage actually is one of the few plants that, like human beings, produces its own heat. It will literally melt its way up through the snow. That's very unique that way. It's a very ancient plant. And skunk cabbage, it has the flower. If you ever see it, I'll find some pictures and I'll put one out. But it's a kind of unique looking spathe plant. It's kind of in this little cup, and then the flower itself is down inside this kind of cuppy thing. And the root of skunk cabbage has an acid to it, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. And if you take and put that into your mouth, you will remember it. It'll be like biting into a live wire. It burns. It's an acid. But this acid can be dried out. It can't be cooked out. It can't be boiled out. It can't be anything but dried out. And when I say dried, I mean you have to get 100% of the moisture out. Most people do not know what 100% dry means. They'll be like, oh, I dry slices all the time. Your apples are not 100% dry. In fact, you wouldn't like them if they were. This has to be 100%, but you dig up the root. I like to do it early in the spring, but I just, some gentleman showed me a video of Kenny Solweg, who is often called the last river rat, and he is digging them up when they're in the big leaf like this. But you slice the root, and you dry it, and you dry it, and you dry it. And when it's dry, that it can crumble, then you powder it, you turn it into powder, and you dry it some more. And this has a narcotic-like effect. The root, once it gets completely dry, it helps the body relax. It helps if you're overly stressed and you can't get anything done and you're all upset about life. It'll help calm your body down. It has a narcotic-like effect. A lot of people use it. Kenny Solweg is one of them. They use it for rheumatoid pains. If you have rheumatism or arthritis pains, it helps. It doesn't actually take the pain away, except that it does, because what it does is your body, when you're in pain, your body tenses up. And that just causes more pain, and then of course your body tenses even more, and then that causes more pain. And what this does is it helps relax your body, so it takes down the pain level. And skunk cabbage does, you can see down here, we're at the edge of a woodland swamp, and you can see that it tends to grow in clumps, so it's really pretty easy to gather up enough of it. You will need a shovel. Anyway, I recommend. Sometimes you can find them where they're growing in loose enough soil, because it's growing in muck, where you can reach down, grab onto all the leaves together and pull it up. But for the most part, I recommend a shovel, because it'll get really frustrating if you pull up 2 or 3 and all you get is a handful of leaves. And the root will be white, and again, you slice it, dry it until it's completely dry, then powder it up, and then dry that powder some more. And then I usually mix it with honey. It's not a very good flavor. I'll mix it with honey and kind of give it as a, like an aspirin, except with honey. And I usually get it much earlier than this. I get it right when the flower proves it's a flower. Because when it's first coming out and the flower hasn't started opening, you can mistake it for hellebore. And hellebore is, of course, poisonous. Once you get into this leaf, though, there's no mistaking it. That is skunk cabbage leaf. So some people, I think that's probably why Mr. Solweg probably digs it up at this time once it's gone to leaf, because you're not going to mistake this for hellebore. It doesn't even look anything like it. So it's safer. The root may not be quite as potent, but hey, always better safe than sorry. But skunk cabbage. Okay, we have this beautiful plant here, one of my favorites, and this is called a trillium. It's called a trillium because it's got some maple leaves or maple seeds in it, but because it has tri-leaves and the flower usually has 3 petals. Sometimes they even grow in 3s. And the trillium is, it's just a beautiful plant. They come in multiple different kinds. You can get, you know, red and white and black. I love the black trilliums. They're just beautiful. And they're a deep woodland plant too. And the trillium, another name for it is called Bloodroot, which is kind of a, it's a slang for birth root. Whoever was saying birth couldn't say it right, obviously enough, and said it, called it Bloodroot. And that's what it was used for the most part. I don't use it for it because it is rare enough, and there are other plants that are easier to use. But the trillium is a very powerful medicinal. The root can be used for aiding in childbirth. Through menopause. It does help with a lot of the symptoms of menopause. And one of the things that it also has is it contains steroids, which excuse me, can help boost the body when the body gets tired. It's a natural steroid. It can help give you strength and boost your body, which is probably one of the reasons why it helps with aid in childbirth. You don't want to take it before, you know, during pregnancy, but as you're giving birth it can be used, especially if you use it in conjunction with something like blue cohosh. Now again, I don't recommend the trillium to be used that way. It's such a beautiful plant, but trilliums are something that are sold. You can buy trilliums, and if you have a shaded area, they like to grow in the shade. If you have a shaded area and you want to use the trillium for wild medicinals or for a medicinal, I suggest buying a whole mess of trilliums and planting a big area of them, and then that's what you harvest, is the stuff that you plant. But also too, if we get into hard times and somebody is having problems with childbirth, it's a good medicinal to have. Women die during childbirth, and this is a good medicinal to have, again, because of the natural steroids that it contains in its roots. It gives the person extra strength. It also helps, as I said, to get through menopause. It helps relieve a lot of the menopausal symptoms, and again, called Bloodroot because the American Indians used it to help with birthing. But that's the trillium, and it's too pretty, in my opinion, to be used as a wild medicinal, but it is one, and it has been used for a very long time as a wild medicinal. Down here amongst the rotting logs we have this beautiful little, very unique flower called the jack-in-the-pulpit, and the reason it was called is because there's a little space down in there, and it kind of, the people used to think it looked like the preacher standing up in the pulpit. And so it was often called the jack-in-the-pulpit. It has 3 leaves, you know, nice size leaves, and then in the base of it is the flower. And again, this is another one of these wild medicinals that I don't recommend using, but the root is very similar to the skunk cabbage root, so that's why I say, because there's so much skunk cabbage, use that. Jack-in-the-pulpit tends to be a little harder to find, a little more rare, so I usually recommend not using it. But again, it has that same medicinal value to its roots, and the same problems. You have to dry it completely, slice it, dry it. Once it gets dry enough to turn into a powder, powder it, and then dry it some more. And again, it can be used for coughs, to help relax the body if the body is coughing too much, so that you can sleep. And it also can be used for aches and pains. It has that narcotic-like effect. It's not as strong of a medicine as the skunk cabbage, which is why, another reason why using the skunk cabbage is better. But the jack-in-the-pulpit can be used. It has to be, I mean, if you eat it fresh, if you take a bite out of it fresh, it's going to be like biting a live wire. It burns your mouth. After it's completely dry, and I say completely, 100% dry, you can use the root of the jack-in-the-pulpit for the same things that you use skunk cabbage for. It's not going to be as potent, so, and it's also a lot more rare, a lot harder to find. Well, if you look down here, this whole thing is all skunk cabbage, so go for the skunk cabbage first. But it is good to know just that jack-in-the-pulpit is a wild medicinal that can be used as well.